Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
With the first type, with the validation, where that is really supremely useful is when a gift officer is looking to expand their portfolio, their major gift portfolio, and identifying prospective donors or donors who are in the pipeline phase that are not quite at the major gift level for the organization to say, should we visit them? What has inspired them to donate to our organization?
Hi there. Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy. I'm Tim Chatton, Marketing Solutionist at MarketSmart. Today on the show is Kelley McGheean, founder of McGeehan Research. Kelley brings an interesting perspective to the show as her consultancy focuses on prospect research. We dive into some of the details in running a business that focuses solely on the research aspect of fundraising. You can find more information about Kelley at McGeehanResearch.com. Here's my interview with Kelley. I'm here today with Kelley McGheean. How are you doing today, Kelley?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tim?
It's been a good day, and I'm excited to speak with you. You're based out of Baltimore, which is very close to us here at MarketSmart, College Park. So you've been operating this consultancy for the past 6 years or so, is that right?
That's correct. I started McGeehan Research in the spring of 2011.
And what's your background? Where'd you come from to reach this point of starting your own consultancy?
I have a long history of working in and for nonprofits. Actually, straight out of college, I happen to be an alum of University of Maryland in College Park, and I started working at nonprofits in the development office straight away. It was a great opportunity to take my background in finance and economics and apply it to missions that I felt really passionate about. And so I've worked for small local nonprofits up to regional, national, and international organizations in every way, shape, and form in a development office. Over the last 10 or so years of my nonprofit employee career, I really was focusing in on major gifts and planned giving. And as part of those roles within the size of development office that I worked in, I oversaw or had to perform prospect research and would be responsible for training the other staff to perform prospect research as well.
And that's something that you focus on in your consultancy today, right?
Correct. The sole focus of my consulting business is prospect research, whether it is performing the prospect research for the nonprofit organizations, training the staff on how to perform research, auditing research programs, kind of do it all around prospect research.
Okay. So what surprised you the most when you started working for nonprofits after college?
When I first started working for nonprofits, I worked for small, local, mid-size, national, international, and there was a resounding theme. That was the most surprising part, that the challenges that nonprofits face at smaller institutions have similar challenges at larger institutions with research, with having the gift officers have the access to validated research and usable research to make their discovery visits, their qualification visits, their solicitation visits. It's really a universal theme of having accurate, strong, related research to the needs of the organization and marrying those needs up with the interests of the prospective donors.
How did the size of the institution influence the ability to do prospect research effectively? Were the larger databases harder to work with, or what was the findings there?
It was really a matter of having the know-how within the staff. Every organization that I would go into as a new staff member after a certain point in my career, they would approach me and say, wow, you have research background. You know how to produce prospect research. You know how to analyze the data, teach our staff. They're really, over the last 20 years, there's really been a growth in the skill sets of prospect researchers within individual organizations. And there's really been an increase in opportunity and knowledge of how to use the research.
Okay. Now, you're based out of Baltimore. Is that where you try to find most of your clients? Do you try to stay local, or do you go outside of that?
I work nationally with organizations. The beauty of being a consultant in prospect research is there is not a need for me to be face-to-face with the nonprofit organizations on a daily basis. So I do have a significant number of organizations that I work with in the greater Baltimore, Washington area. However, I work with nonprofit organizations across the country.
Okay. At the very beginning of your consultancy, what was your approach for finding clients?
I have to say that I was very fortunate when I started my consultancy business. I was at a moment in my career where I had been a major gift officer and a development officer for about 16 years, which is a long time. And I really enjoyed the work, but I was really seeking a work-life balance and really trying to zero in on what would be the most beneficial skill set to use to help nonprofits. And I had an idea to focus on prospect research. So I reached out to a colleague of mine who is a development director. And I said, let me bounce this idea off of you. As a development director, would you be interested in the concept of research on demand? Because the reality is, a lot of nonprofit organizations have a need for and want to have prospect research for their institution, but they just do not have the resources to hire a full-time prospect researcher. And so I held that conversation with her, and within a month, I had my first client. It was highly unusual, I understand, and I feel so fortunate and I'm so grateful. It was just the right time, right people, right conversations to be had. And she had actually put me in touch with somebody who had a need at that point in time.
Okay. So prospect researching, is this something that it's all being handled by yourself, or have you trained virtual assistants and other people to help you to expand your capacity?
It is something that I regularly think through and analyze if I want to have a larger staff. And I have come to the conclusion, as somebody who has managed development staff before at various nonprofits that I've worked with, that I much more prefer spending time doing the research and working with the nonprofits myself. However, I also recognize the need for nonprofits who have large projects that really have a time frame and a level of need that is not manageable for a sole practitioner like myself. So what I have employed is a network of researchers, and there are different prospect researchers that I work with across the country, and we collaborate and come together when there is a call for more hands on deck, so to speak. We're all independent, and then we come together and work on projects jointly when needed. And it's a fantastic model, and I've really loved that. And in response to the question about virtual assistants, I have found that I like to outsource the things that are required in my work that I'm just not that good at. I had received some great advice several years ago that was to focus on what I'm good at and delegate the rest. And I have embraced that ideology, and I will delegate the areas of my work that are not my strengths. Instead of spending excessive time on that, I would much prefer to focus on what I enjoy, the research, and what are my strengths within the work. And it's a much better work product for the nonprofit organizations.
What kind of things do you delegate? Well, what don't you enjoy doing?
So I delegate technology and website design and marketing material, graphic design, all the types of things that can be outsourced.
Yeah.
Those are the items that I will delegate out.
Okay. And what kind of technology do you employ to do your actual research with?
So I do employ a lot of subscription services, as most prospect researchers, whether they are consultants, freelancers, or institutional researchers. I would say the top paid subscriptions that I utilize are DonorSearch and LexisNexis. I also have regularly evaluated and used Wealth Engine and iWave. What I enjoy most, and I find it to be a great benefit for the nonprofits that I work with as well, is that I will bring my tools to a project. And oftentimes the nonprofits will have invested in certain tools themselves. And I will use their tools as well as my tools and do a side-by-side comparison and evaluation for the benefit of the nonprofit. Because let's be honest, the tools have just improved so much over the last 10 years. And every year, each company is creating new improvements and new add-ons that are benefiting the entire nonprofit industry with the researchers who are using them. So it's great to be constantly evaluating and analyzing, are these the right tools for me at this time?
Before you expanded out to have the network of people you work with, what was your typical capacity? How many people could you research in a day?
So the general rule of thumb in looking at research, it really depends on the level of research. When I first started my business, I was focused almost exclusively on creating solicitation profiles, full in-depth analytical profiles. And over the years, I've really broadened the array of research that I do. So I have qualification profiles, level 1 profiles, validations of screenings, event briefings. So depending on the level of research requested will depend on the length of time. Typically, the industry standards are, a few minutes to 30 minutes for a validation and event briefing, up to 6 to 8 hours for a full profile to be completed, soup to nuts.
So the first step would be, you're probably focusing on major and planned gifts. Is that accurate? Or
with the first type, with the validation, where that is really supremely useful is when a gift officer is looking to expand their portfolio, their major gift portfolio, and identifying prospective donors or donors who are in the pipeline phase that are not quite at the major gift level for the organization, to say, should we visit them? What has inspired them to donate to our organization? It is a very brief look at the capacity of the individual and where their giving is, and any other meaningful data that is identified.
And then in the more in-depth research, how do you pull together the internal and external data? Do you have a social media tool that kind of goes out and searches what they're sharing on different networks?
With the research that I compile, it is all publicly available information. Nothing is privately held. And it's always one of those tough questions to navigate when board members or volunteers are asking the gift officers and the researchers about personal information of prospective donors. There's going to be a lot of information out there that just is not publicly available, that can't be found. There's social media resources, looking at LinkedIn to provide identifiers to networks, Twitter accounts, and Facebook if their profile is public, but it's all publicly available information.
Okay. Your business model, has that changed over the 6 years, or is it the same as it was day one?
It has changed in that I am interested in partnering with organizations where I feel passionate about. It's been a wonderful opportunity to really feel that I am stepping in and being part of the development team. That is how I see myself. When I work with a group, I am part of their team. We are working collaboratively. So I felt strongly about that truly from the beginning. And otherwise, I have expanded my outreach to be more involved with other consultants who are working with nonprofits in different capacities, capital campaign consultants, direct mail consultants, annual fund consultants, and working collaboratively to provide the type of information and material that is not their forte. And it's a wonderful partnering relationship.
Okay. When you first started, was there any financial investment you had to make to do this? Did you save up for, you could operate for 6 months before you needed to come with a different strategy?
Again, I was extremely fortunate from day one. I had a consistent flow of business coming through my door. Given my history of being in the Washington, D.C. and Baltimore markets as a major gift officer, I had a wide network of development professionals that I knew and that I highly respected. So that was a great entree into prospect research and working collaboratively. The investments really circled around purchasing the subscriptions for the paid databases and creating a few basic marketing pieces. So the overall cost has been pretty minimal initially, and I again, feel very fortunate because almost all of my business has been referral and word of mouth.
Okay. Is there anything you'd change about how you approached your first few projects looking back at it now?
One, when I first started my business, I billed my clients on an hourly rate instead of on a project rate. And it was a double-edged sword. I felt that I was being very honest and forthright with the client, saying, this is how much time I spent on the project. But then I would also be conscious of, wow, I want to make sure that they're getting the most bang for their buck, and I don't want to overcharge them. So, do I hold back on the research? As I morphed into a project-based fee for research, it allowed me to open up and expand and really dig in and make sure that I was collecting all information and creating the story for the gift officers that they desperately needed without feeling the constraints of the hours and the clock ticking and reminding me that they were being billed. So that was significant. And I think I would have also on an earlier stage looked at a wider array of research opportunities and offerings for nonprofits. There was some time that I really did focus on full profiles, which are extremely useful, but there are a lot of other ways that nonprofits can get a lot of bang for their buck with research, with validations and level one research that is not going to be as in-depth, but still gets the gift officers out the door and meeting with the prospective donors.
Yeah. What's your typical schedule like on a weekly basis?
I do not hold traditional work hours. One of the other aspects of my work, when I was starting my business, I really wanted to focus on a work-life balance and really wanted to make sure that I was able to capture wonderful moments with my children who have grown up and they are now my research assistants. So I will work early in the morning, late at night, pulling those all-nighters through the middle of the day. I do not have a 9-to-5 job, and it's not going to be the best fit for everybody. But I got to tell you, it is fantastic for me because I can walk away from my desk and go do something fun with my kids and feel confident and secure that I have satisfied all of my work requirements before leaving in the middle of the day on a Wednesday.
Yeah, best time to go grocery shopping when everyone's at work, right?
Right.
Do you have any tips for getting into work mode? Do you get all dressed up and to say, I'm working now and, distraction-free environments? How do you create a good environment when you're getting into that mode?
So there's a couple of things that I feel very strongly about. At the end of whatever I determine is my work day for that particular day, I write a list of what I need to achieve the following day. And I put it on my desk. And I have a designated workspace that I use strictly for my business. When my day starts, I sit down. I look at what I need to read, industry news, what I need to do with nonprofits, with my clients, and then I start working. And I usually take about a 2-hour block of time. And then I make sure that I get up and walk out of my office and clear my head, and then I'll go back to it. And it allows me to stay focused. I keep my other obligations outside, but keeping that list is the key for me and being able to check off each thing that I need to do that day.
Yeah, a proper task manager is vital, right?
Yeah.
When you're in there working, did you create a template for your different prospects you're researching, or are you using Excel? What's the process like for, so you find the information and now where do you input it? How do you save that information?
It's interesting that you asked that because when I had first started my business, I had investigated into the development of a database to house all of the information that I was acquiring so that I could generate in a more automated format the detailed narratives that I have for.
Did you look into like FileMaker and things of that nature?
Yeah, and I even looked into custom programs, and it really didn't suit my needs because every single prospect is a little bit different. Even when I research the same prospect a couple of years apart, the amount of information that is available is going to be different. So what I actually do is I have templates to follow and to keep me on task for creating the research, but provide it in a Word document because that is the most user-friendly version for the gift officers. And then if they so choose, they can import it into their database. And if I'm doing something more like a validation, I will utilize screening Excel files and CSV files, incorporate the findings and the data into those, and then it can be uploaded automatically into the database for the organizations.
Okay. And the Word templates, do you design it with printers in mind, or is it all digital with the gift officers, what they're working with these days?
Typically with printers in mind, yeah.
Okay. Prior to your consultancy, you worked, I think, in education and environmental, human services. Did these different sectors have any common problems you saw?
There's always the need to raise more money, regardless of what type of organization and what size. There was also the continual learning process with the leadership, the volunteer leadership, and to understand what the gift officers needed in support and in collaboration to create the relationships in order to generate the level of gifts that were needed to support the organization. Because the boards typically are going to be rotating, there is an ongoing learning need between the volunteers and the staff. And it was a great opportunity, truthfully, because the volunteers could teach the staff tremendous ideas and bring with them from other organizations that they've volunteered with.
When we return, a quick lightning round with Kelley. First quick break, we will learn how to access a new webinar by Dr. Russell James. Dr. Russell James is back and ready to share the knowledge you need to advance your major and planned gift fundraising programs. Learn from the expert who studies the neuroscience behind planned and major giving to take your program to the next level. Visit www.imarketsmart.com/donor surveys to access the webinar and download the slides. That's imarketsmart.com/donor surveys. Here's what you'll learn: the science behind effective surveys for fundraising, the important components of the most effective surveys, how to talk about benefits in the right way, how to advance the donor life story, how to emphasize lasting impact, how to encourage tribute gifts and wills, how to use family awards instead of formal awards to encourage planned gifts, and many more helpful tips and tricks for optimizing your donor surveys. Once again, that's imarketsmart.com/donor surveys to access the webinar and slides. With that, let's get to the lightning round with Kelley.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I had mentioned this earlier, to focus on what I'm good at and delegate the rest.
What piece of advice would you have given to yourself as a 25-year-old?
Not to worry about making every single little detail perfect, make it the best as I can.
What book would you recommend to those getting started and why?
Prospect Research for Fundraisers by Jennifer Filla and Helen Brown. They are two great minds in the prospect research field and are hands-on with their experience and knowledge. It's a great resource.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
Making lists. I am a list maker through and through.
Do you have a favorite or best under $100 purchase you've made in the last month or so?
A label maker for my files. I still have a small cache of hard files that I keep, and the label maker keeps it all neat, tidy, and organized.
Do you have a favorite monthly subscription or service that you're signed up for?
It's an annual subscription, but Donor Search would be my favorite.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Right after the birth of my first child, I had a milestone birthday, and I decided for that birthday that I was going to go to trapeze school.
Oh, awesome. I've flown 3 or 4 times. It's wonderful. What's one of your most important passions outside of your work?
And my children.
Desk or car, what would you clean first?
Desk.
Do you have a favorite kind of animal?
Dog.
Tea or coffee?
Oh, both in massive quantities.
What do clients never ask you that you wish they did?
If my proposal is negotiable, because I find so often that when a client sees the proposal number, they get concerned. And what I wish they would come back and say is, can we modify the proposal either in quantity or in pricing? And typically I can make things work within their budget. But a lot of people just are not comfortable negotiating and saying what they need to do to modify to make it all work.
What is the most common error you see nonprofits make, and how can they avoid doing that?
When it comes to research, the most common problem that I see nonprofits have is thinking that there is more privately held information about a person that the researcher should be able to find. The researchers are going to be able to find publicly available information, but private information is not accessible. And unfortunately, a lot of times nonprofits think that it should be.
What charities do you admire or support?
One is the high school that I went to. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, Ursuline Academy in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was one of the most wonderful experiences I ever had. Very foundation building for me. And another is an organization that I support on a weekly basis, which is the local library system. Not only do I love it for the services it provides to the community, but I love it as a researcher because there are so many fantastic tools that prospect researchers can use through their public library system.
And where can people find more information about your services?
They can find me on LinkedIn and also at my website at www.McGeehanresearch.com.
Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful speaking with you today, Kelley.
It's been fantastic, Tim. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in iTunes and pass along to a friend or colleague. If you're curious about what we do, make sure to check out iMarketSmart.com, and don't forget to check out the Dr. Russell James webinar by visiting iMarketSmart.com/donor surveys. Thanks for listening.